So it is a big day today.
All right, there's the big button. Let's do this.
Imagine a blueprint, a step-by-step guide, a case study where we peel back the curtains and show you what it takes to sell on Amazon. Welcome to the $1 Million Case Study. Another tool in your life tool belt is meditation. Now, it doesn't have to be weird or voodoo. It can be prayer or silence, really just the practice of stillness. We're overwhelmed with stimulus everywhere and everything we do. It's rare to have those quiet moments. Now, this isn't just for Amazon. This is for life. So, if you haven't already, then maybe try it out. You might find it's just what you needed. All right, so today I am going to need a clear mind because I'm putting it all together. We're gonna do some last checks of the different niches in the product tracker to see if there's been any shifts in demand or competition, etc. We'll then also go through the profitability of our products in order to make sure that there's a great profit margin. So let's dive in. We're over in Jungle Scout now inside of the product tracker. It's been a little while since I looked at this last. The one that we like the most and that I'm looking at launching is the washable pee pads for dogs. The reason being that there's really high demand, as you can see from the average daily sales. And also they're relatively simple to manufacture. You can't really go too wrong with the mats as far as I can tell. The only thing against them is the fact that it is very competitive. It's actually, after the snuffle mats, it's the most competitive in this lineup. So that's typically not something that I would recommend, particularly if you're just starting out. But in this instance, I'm kind of interested in exploring that further because I think it would be fun to share with you guys the process of what it looks like if you do try to rank a very competitive product. What does that look like, okay? So that's why I'm interested in that particular angle. All right, so that's been interesting to kind of get an update. I think the biggest change here from when Kerry and I looked at this last is that I think across the board here, the average number of reviews has jumped up a little bit just because it's taken us time to actually pull the trigger. And this is why I've talked before about the importance of speed. When you see an opportunity, jump on it because it does get harder if you wait too long, which unfortunately with, other Jungle Scout responsibilities and just getting all of this prepared, it's taken longer than I would have liked to launch this product, and therefore all the competition has gotten a little harder. But for the sake of the case study, I think it'll be an interesting one to share with you guys.
I'd love to hear, do you have any success rituals, morning routines, etc.? And if so, what are they?
The way I see it is, I could just kind of wake up in the morning and, you hear the saying, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. Well, I don't want to just leave my day to chance, whether I wake up in a good mood or not. I want to prime myself. I want to put myself in a great mood, in a great state. And so I take the time each morning. I wake up at 5 a.m. so that I have the time to do this. And I will do things that are going to help nurture my mind, body, and soul. Making more money is great. And we all want to achieve a level of financial freedom, and that's very important. But the other areas of life are equally, if not more important. And to not, I think it's so easy that when our goal is to build an Amazon business, we breathe Amazon day and night, and we forget or neglect other areas of our life that actually could help us be more productive with our business.
Investing that time actually improves your efficiency for the rest of the day, and your energy levels and everything else. So you actually do end up, more efficient or with more time, even though it doesn't maybe seem like that from the outset.
But my typical routine is wake up and I meditate, and then I spend about an hour and a half working on my business because I find that to me is the quietest time of the day.
Honestly, just like taking it slow in the morning and not feeling like rushed to my laptop, and just, you know what I mean, enjoying the morning and enjoying my coffee and making breakfast, and just, you know what I mean, not ever feeling there's any like urgency to start my day. And then I just feel like I can flow into my day a lot better, as opposed to when I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get this done and this done. And just kind of taking some time for myself in the morning.
I think my key success ritual is my morning run. I think that what it does and what it allows me to do is, as I'm running, I'm actually thinking through my next steps for the day. I hardly ever listen to music when I run. I actually, if anything, I'll put audiobooks, and I use that time also to learn something.
Every single day, I just try to accomplish one thing. So that way, at the end of the day, I'm always making forward progress. And I always dedicate at least one day out of the week just to plan, just for thinking, so to speak, and not implementation. And that allows me to just kind of look ahead, because oftentimes we have our heads down, kind of in the weeds doing stuff, and we kind of lose sight of the big picture.
Now, just before finally picking a product, what I want to do is another profitability check, adding in a few more details than the rough profitability check that Kerry and I did back in product research. So the resource that we're going to use is this FBA profit calculator that we created in the last season of the $1 Million Case Study. So let me walk you through it real quick. First up, you'll see that things are split into two different categories here. Long-term costs associated with selling this particular product. In column D, we have the startup costs. And these are what I like to think of as just the one-time initial fees. So these would be things like creating a mold if you're getting something changed on your product. This could be $500, $1,000 upfront, but then you never pay that price again. It could also be getting your product samples, getting your initial photography done, or maybe some design work, doing giveaways or promotions to get some initial sales and get your product up and running. These are all examples of costs that you should just incur one time. Typically, you will incur a number of startup costs to get your product and business up and running. And if you take that into consideration in your profitability altogether, then it might seem like you're super unprofitable because you're spending all this money up front. But really what you want to be thinking about is, when my business is up and running, how much money will I be spending and how much will I be making back in return on a regular basis? So these startup costs are typical of any business, but unlike a brick and mortar store, for example, the startup costs for this type of business are really, really small in comparison to that of a brick and mortar. So that's why they're split up here. So we're gonna go through an example with our PPADs. To start up, we're going to input our sales price. So you might ask, how did I come up with that price? I essentially did a search for the product on Amazon, and this was what I based my price off of. It's a good idea to determine what the current price range is, what's the average price, what's the lower price, what's the higher price, and then decide where do you want to position yourself. Are you selling a premium product that you imagine having a higher price than the majority? Or are you trying to win on price and so you're one of the lower priced listings, which I would probably never recommend trying to be, trying to win on price. That usually just ends up with a race to the bottom where everyone just keeps undercutting each other. So you don't really want your competitive advantage to be your price point, in my opinion. So I would say either be in the middle, similar to everyone else, or aim to be better than everyone else and charge a little bit more. In this particular instance, it was kind of hard to pick a price because with these PPADs, they come in lots of different sizes, and then there's lots of different pack sizes. So I did something quite scrappy. I took this information here on the extension and I decided to export it. So when I opened this up in Google Sheets, I added an extra couple of columns here, one for the size of that particular pea pad, and then the second column for how many is in that pack. And I just literally went through each listing here. A lot of them I could get this information from the title. I was able to determine the size of that pea pad. And then I also listed out, is it a 2-pack, 4-pack? Is it just a single pack, etc. And then essentially I just sorted or grouped them all by the same size. I just wanted an idea of which is the most common size that people are selling, and also roughly like what size pack as well. So I cross-referenced these sizes with the sizes that my supplier offered, and in the end I decided to go with a 30 by 36 size because that was the closest one that my supplier offered. So the next thing is, how did I determine the price? Okay, and I kind of did some rudimentary calculations here as well. So you'll see these two here, there's a 2-pack and a 4-pack. Okay, what's the price per pea pad? So I did this price divided by 2, and then I did the same thing for the other one. The next calculation I did was just to multiply these out by 3 so that I could see what it would cost if I was to use the same sort of price per pad that these guys did. I just wanted to make sure that whatever price point I choose is within reason and not drastically different to what other sellers are doing. And initially, I think when Kerry and I were talking about it, we quite liked the idea of keeping it just under $30. So I'm thinking something around this mark where it's like $29.99. If I come back to Amazon and take a quick look here, all the organic ones are $25. There's a lot in that $25 range. So my thought process here is that a lot of them are around about that mid $20 range. I want to go higher than that because we're offering 3 pads rather than 2. But there's probably, I feel like if we cross over the $30 range, I suspect that it's gonna get harder to sell it. So I think if we can keep it in the $20 range, it's only about $5 more to get an extra pad, which works out at pretty good value. If you're getting 2 pads for $25, getting 3 for $29.99, that's kind of my thinking behind choosing that price point, okay? But until really selling it and testing it, I don't know for sure. So back to our profit calculator. Now we're gonna come down into the long-term unit costs. The FOB price is $7.75. That's what my supplier quoted me per each item. Essentially, FOB means free on board or freight on board. That means that the factory is the one that is responsible for taking the product from their warehouse to the port. And that's the most common type of pricing that a factory will give you. Now, you'll see that shipping is split into 2 different categories. One is the freight cost to get the goods from China to the port in the US. And this would be if you're using like air cargo or ocean freight, which again just gets them to the US port. Then you also have to pay to get the shipment from the port in the US into Amazon's warehouse. And that's what the domestic shipping price is. Now, if your product is less than, let's say, 200 kilos in total, then you probably actually just want to ship with something like DHL or UPS, FedEx, that kind of thing, which your supplier can usually organize for you. And this gets shipped straight into Amazon's distribution centers, so you only have one price here. Now, for us, with a small order, we could just get it shipped in with one of these services like DHL, UPS, FedEx, and I'd estimate it to be around about $1.50 per unit. So that's why I've only filled in the one shipping cost here. Now, when we do the episode on shipping, we'll go into all of this a little bit deeper. However, here are some rough rules of thumb that you can use. First is $7 per kilo for air courier, $5 per kilo for air cargo. Then you have ocean, which is by far going to be the cheapest and probably the best for larger, heavier products. The rule of thumb here is around about 60 cents per kilo. However, I want to caveat this with saying it's much harder to estimate ocean freight pricing because it does change a lot on time of the year. It's also based off of the volume that you take up rather than the weight necessarily. So just realize that if you're trying to estimate these costs for an ocean shipment, that this is a rough rule of thumb. The only way that you're going to know for sure is to get a quote from your freight forwarder. A great place to do this is freightos.com, where you can get shipping quotes from multiple freight forwarders and figure out which option is best for you. Now, if you've got a larger shipment or you go with a freight forwarder, then this cost will get it from the factory or from the port in China to the port in the US. And then what you need to do is to get it from the port in the US to Amazon's distribution centers. And this is, again, the domestic shipping price. And so you can try and estimate that part if you want, but another way to do so is to go into Seller Central. When you create a shipment there, that's when you have the option to book and pay for Amazon's discounted rates for shipping products within the US into Amazon. The next thing that you want to look at is your landed cost. It totals up the biggest costs that you'll incur, which is the product cost and the shipping costs. This is the amount that I have to pay out of my pocket to get one of these units. Next up, you've got your FBA fees, and I'll show you how to figure those out. So there's a couple of places that you can do it. If you remember, Jungle Scout has a FBA profit calculator. It's built into the product database and also into the extension tool. So the way to figure out your FBA fees, let's say you're looking for a similar listing to yours, okay? So I'm gonna look at this one here. It's the same 36 by 30 inch size. This is a 2-pack, so of course, my 3-pack would be a little bit heavier, but I'll use it for this demonstration. What you would do is come across to this net amount and click on that to bring up the profit calculator. We can now use this to estimate the FBA fees for our product. So we're gonna come into product price, because remember, I am thinking of selling it for $29.99. Then the other thing I can input is the product cost. Now it says product cost here, but I would include the landed cost. So the total amount that you're paying up front, which in our case is $9.25. So I'm gonna input that one here, and this will actually calculate the profit for us based off of just taking away the FBA fees as well as the landed cost. This is what we did in our product research section, just our basic costs. But I am gonna use our profit calculator here because we can incorporate in a few more fees, all right? What I'm actually just looking for here is the total FBA fee, which in this case is $10.90, which is why I've put that one in here as a pretty close estimate. Now, as far as PPC goes, the rule of thumb that we like to use at Jungle Scout is 5% of the revenue or of the sales price, okay? So what I have here is 5% of the $29.99 sales price. So roughly $1.50 in total for my PPC per unit. Something to understand here is that when someone purchases your product after clicking on one of your PPC ads, your advertising cost of sale, your ACOS, is going to be much higher than 5%. 5% would be incredible, like top 1%. That would be amazing. But you also need to understand that a lot of the purchases are going to happen as a result of organic searches, okay? And not just through your PPC ads. The sales that come from your PPC ads will just make up a smaller portion of your overall sales. So my advertising cost of sale is going to be much higher than 5%. It's probably gonna be more like 20, 30, maybe 40%. But once you take that amount spent on PPC advertising and average it out across all of your sales, that's how we got to roughly 5% of your unit cost. So my total cost per unit here is $21.65, which leaves me with $8.34 profit, or about a 90% ROI. Now, ROI, or return on investment, essentially means how much you're getting in return for how much you put in. So out of my pocket, I'm spending $9.25, and in return, after all expenses are taken out, I'm getting back an additional $8.34 profit. Now, generally, I'd always shoot for a target ROI of 100% or more, and this one is actually pretty close to that, so I'm pretty happy with that amount, particularly as the dollar amount is pretty decent as well. And also keep in mind that I've started out with a smaller order of 500 units, and in the future, as I increase the number of units that I purchase to 1,000 or maybe more, then I should be able to get lower pricing on the P-pads. Also, I'm planning to use air to ship this product in from my initial shipment, as it's reasonably small and lightweight, and so I can also get it into market faster. But in the future, I plan to shift to ocean shipping, which will be considerably cheaper and overall get the freight cost down. The other thing that I like to do at this stage is to consider the worst case scenario pricing. This means how low can I sell this product for and still break even? Just consider worst case scenario if there's too much competition and I can't break through, or for whatever reason, I decide to get out of this product. It's always good to know how low you can drop the price but still retain or get your money back, okay? So let's do another profit calculation. So essentially what I'm gonna do is just play around with the product pricing. Of course, the product cost will remain the same, but let's say I drop this down to $20.99. When I do that, this initial calculation gives us $2.64. But if I take the FBA fee and I'm gonna plug that into my calculator here, and I'm gonna update the pricing here to $20.99, you can see that even I've still got PPC fees incorporated. At this point, I'm still making $1.59 per profit. So I can tell that around about $20, $21, $22, I can drop my price as low as that and still spend a little bit of money on PPC and basically get all of my money back in worst case scenario. Because again, if you come back to Amazon, you'll see that a lot of these only have 2 packs and they're selling at about $25. So if I'm selling a 3-pack at about $20, $21, even $22, I should be able to sell out of those if I absolutely need to. I'll quickly show you another way to do a profit calculation if you don't have Jungle Scout. And so that is using Amazon's FBA calculator. The easiest way to find that is just to type in Amazon FBA calculator, and it's usually the first result at the top. All right, so I can type in a keyword or I can paste in an ASIN, okay? So I could type in washable pee pads for dogs, that's my main keyword, and then it'll give me a number of options here. I can see this is the guy that I used before. Let's use a different one for this example. In my case, it's a little bit trickier because the sizes do vary a little bit. So it's probably best if you've got a very specific size to go over to Amazon and then find a listing that matches your specific size. And a good thing to do is to check the weight of the product. Okay, check the size and the weight to make sure that it matches your product, okay? Because essentially that's how a lot of these FBA fees are determined, is the size and the weight, okay? So what I'm going to do, if I like this one, I'm gonna copy the ASIN, and now I'm going to come back to Seller Central, and instead of selecting a product there, instead I'm going to paste in the ASIN. All right, so you've got a couple of options here. Your fulfillment refers to FBM, or fulfilled by merchant. This is if you're fulfilling, sending the products off yourself. Or you've got Amazon fulfillment, which is FBA, meaning that you're sending it into Amazon's warehouses or distribution centers, which is what we're doing. So we're gonna fill out the right-hand column here. So we're gonna start with our item price, which is $29.99. Then if we scroll down, there's a couple more fields to fill out. You've got the cost of the product and then also the ship to Amazon or the freight cost. So I could just put both of those together and just put the landed cost here, or I can break it down. So that is $7.75 for the cost of the product and then $1.50 for the shipping fees. Then you just come down and hit calculate, and now you've got all of your fees. In Jungle Scout, it kind of shows you your total FBA fees, which is why I like to use that tool. Here on Seller Central, you do need to add up the selling on Amazon fees, the fulfillment by Amazon fees, and you can even throw in the monthly storage cost as well. So then this will give you your total FBA fees, and then that's what you plug back in to your FBA profit calculator over here. Now to wrap up the section here on long-term unit costs, I do just want to point out that when you look at your total unit cost down here, which is $21.65 in my case, that number can sound really big and really scary, but just keep in mind that that's not actually out of your pocket. The way I like to think about it when you're forecasting or thinking about cash flow is the landed cost is what you're actually spending out of pocket up front, okay, to get the product into Amazon. The total per unit cost is including, your FBA fees and even your PPC fees, which don't really come out until later. Some of your PPC fees can, but generally those will actually come out of the sales that you make. So you don't normally have to pay that amount up front, okay? So in my instance, it's $9.25 that I'm paying up front. So hopefully that helps if you're feeling a little intimidated by the total per unit cost. So now let's talk a little bit about the startup costs. I've gone ahead and put a few values in here. To start up with, I've got the sample cost here, which for us was around about $100, which is fairly reasonable. Expect to pay anywhere up to maybe $150 for samples. That's fairly typical. Next up is photography. We're gonna be doing a whole episode dedicated to photography where I'm gonna be teaching you how you can do your own product photography very inexpensively. So if you don't want to do it yourself, then another good place to check is the Jungle Scout Market. I've spoken about it before, but here you can find a whole bunch of pre-vetted Amazon freelancers. All right, we've got one here for $255, $500, $450 that includes some images. These are really nice because they're more than just taking photos. They're also including some design work so that you can get nice infographics and the kind of images that tend to convert really well on Amazon. So I'd say anywhere from $180 up to maybe $500, depending on what you're after. For this example, I'm just going to put in $180, but most likely I'll end up doing at least the initial photography myself, and I'll show you guys how to do that. When you come down to design work, I chose to use 99 Designs, and that one is a little bit more expensive. That was $299, but you can definitely get that one a lot cheaper as well, just to get your initial logo designed or your product packaging. Again, if we come back to the Jungle Scout Market, I can go into logo design. Let's see. And again, there's like a lot of different options here depending on how much work you're wanting to get, whether it's just the logo or whether you want, here a whole brand identity design, which is a little more extensive than just a logo. The next item here is giveaways, or really just a marketing or promotional budget for when you're launching your product. Let me try and explain. When you first launch on Amazon, I'm gonna be launching for $30, so I'm actually gonna be launching $5 higher than a lot of other competitors. The thing to keep in mind is that you have 0 reviews, so it's a lot harder to convert people, okay? In order to start ranking well organically and get organic sales, you need to start building up reviews in order to get reviews, you just need to get a lot of sales, and then a certain percentage of that will give you reviews, okay? It's kind of a numbers game. You just need to get lots and lots and lots and lots of sales, and then slowly your reviews will rise up as a result, okay? So how do you get all of these sales? Well, when you start out, one of the best ways is to drop your price. Previously, a lot of people do this in the form of a promotional giveaway, where you put your product up on a deals website at a steep discount, give people a coupon for it, and then they'll purchase it at that steep discount. Today, you can also do things on Amazon like offer coupons as well, or you could just lower your price and drive traffic to it using PPC. But what happens is when you drop your price that much, you tend to either break even or you potentially even lose a few dollars, okay? And that's what this giveaway budget is for. So for instance, if we come over to our sales price, let's say that I really wanted to boost the sales. I'm gonna just knock $10 off this. I'm gonna drop it to $19.99. Now, technically I should change the FBA fees, but for this example, we'll just leave it. What you'll find here is that you're actually losing $1.16 per unit, okay? But I'm okay with doing that because right now when I'm launching my product, I just want to get lots and lots of sales and therefore reviews to kickstart your product. A lot of people are tentative and they're not willing to break even or lose a little bit of money when they first launch. And what ends up happening is they just get stuck, not making any sales, not getting any reviews, and just not getting any traction. But just like any business, you do need to allocate money for that launch or that marketing promotion of your product to begin with. So if I'm sending in my initial 500 units, I might discount or drop the price for, I don't know, 200 units, and I might be losing $1.16 on each of those. All right, so let's just quickly do a calculation here. So let's say 250 times that amount, that's actually $289 that I might be losing, okay? So that's what I'm referring to here with this giveaway budget or discount budget. $500 is very conservative. It's most likely gonna be a lot less. Last up here is just any other miscellaneous costs that you might come across. It might be a Jungle Scout subscription or anything else that might contribute to getting your product up and running. Now, I know there are also other expenses that you can include in here. I try to just think of the biggest ones that essentially make the biggest impact on my pocket. But if you're a very detailed person, then you can absolutely put in every little expense here so that you can fully understand all of your costs. I highly encourage it. So once you're ready to pull the trigger, that's when we can transition to start thinking about creating a formal relationship with the factory and going ahead and placing our first order.
So the final price for the pea pads was $7.55 for a 3-pack, and I ordered 500 units. That brings the total to $3,775. I then got 30/70 payment terms with my supplier. So I paid 30% upfront, which was $1,140 plus transaction fees. Now I'm paying the 70% remainder to get it shipped out. And this comes to $2,635 plus transaction fees. So I always forget that feeling you get when you place an order. The very first time you ever place an order, it's the most terrifying thing ever. You're sending 2, 3, 5 grand off into the ether and you have no idea whether you're gonna get anything back or what's gonna happen. You obviously have to do as much preparation as possible, but then that's the point that you just have to take a leap of faith. And it's always a little bit scary. I haven't launched a new product in a little while and I forgot how scary it is. So let's do it. Let's press the button.
All right, we've got our pads. There's the big button, let's do this. Here's an agreement template that we've created here at Jungle Scout. This helps you be super clear upfront on what's expected and can help eliminate certain issues and back and forth. So you can take this template to your factory and ask them to sign it before placing an initial order. We'll give you guys this template too, so check the description for the link to that one. So now let me walk you through it real quick. Make sure you include as many details as you can about your particular product. You can never have too much detail here. Anything from what the tags look like, to color codes, to where your logo goes, whatever else. Later on, if you go and ask for any changes or additional things, even if they seem really small to you, they're going to want more money out of you, okay? That's just how it works. You can put pictures in here, your poor man's drawings, anything you can do to help communicate to make sure that both of you guys are on the same page. It's important to have the total cost in here. That's included in this section right here. And you'll also see that there's a section in here that states that if the production timeline exceeds what you agreed upon for the delivery date or the shipment date, that they have to give you 1, advance notification, and 2, if it's delayed by more than 7 days, then you can start to enforce a 5% discount for every 7 days that the production's delayed. Now, we've never had to enforce this at Jungle Scout. To be honest, we're probably a little bit lax on it. If it's 8 or 9 days, then I normally wouldn't worry about trying to twist their arm on it. However, the nice thing about having this is that there's then more motivation for them to make sure that they get you your goods on time. Now, when we come to the inspection section, there's 2 main points here that I'm trying to get across. The first one is that I'm requiring them to do an internal inspection. And what this means is essentially your sales rep or account manager, whoever you're working with or whoever is there, needs to take pictures because essentially everyone has a smartphone. So it's very easy for them to snap off some pictures of the goods before they're started, while they're in production, and then after they've been finished and while they're being packaged, okay? So this is 1, really fun to see, and 2, you can start to spot any potential problems early on, as opposed to later on after everything's completed. It also says in here that you're allowed to do a third-party inspection, which is a really great idea. And I'm gonna talk more about this in a later episode, but this just means that I hire a third party to do an inspection on the products before they're shipped out. I also have in here that if the inspection from a third party fails, that they have to pay for the second inspection, and this is something that is relatively common in China. And then onto the shipping section, I'm just covering 2 items. 1, how I plan on shipping these goods, whether it's by air courier or air cargo or sea freight or whatever else. And it's just good to be on the same page. You'll see in here that I also went ahead and told them in here that I'm gonna ask them to send me a sample early on, as soon as the first one's done, so that I can start doing my product photography. You'll also see a confidentiality clause in here, which is really nice to have. It basically is just telling them that, hey, you're not allowed to share with anyone else that I'm purchasing this product from you and what price I am getting it for. And lastly, it's just the payment terms. Generally, the most common payment terms are 30% deposit for them to get started on the order, and then 70% of the remaining balance is due when they ship out the goods. This is another thing that is negotiable, like most things. Another common one is you might be asked to do a 50% deposit and then 50% after. And something else to understand is that as you build a relationship with a supplier over time, you can ask for better payment terms. The last thing I want to cover is how to go about paying your supplier. I've mentioned payment terms and how they can be split up, but in terms of the actual payment method, the most common one and what factories typically expect is a wire transfer, commonly referred to as a TT transfer. Some other methods include Alibaba Trade Assurance. This works similar to an escrow, whereas Alibaba gives you a certain level of protection in case anything were to go wrong, like if the supplier runs off with your money or something like that. That being said, Alibaba possibly favors the suppliers slightly. So if it's something like a quality issue or maybe a timeliness issue, then don't expect to get any or much money back. But if they, totally rip you off, never send you your goods or anything else, then trade assurance should give you your money back. A lot of people often ask about PayPal, which is fine for the samples. However, most factories aren't going to be willing to take that for bigger orders because the PayPal fees are pretty significant. If you can convince them to take PayPal, they're probably going to want you to pay for that additional fee. Generally, I'd recommend Alibaba Trade Assurance if you can, and then after that, a wire transfer. Lastly would be PayPal, which I've never personally used for a bigger order and only for samples. I would recommend staying away from services like Western Union, however. If they're asking you to pay via Western Union, then that to me is definitely a red flag, and is usually the behavior of people trying to scam you or rip you off. For our international viewers, if you don't have a US bank account, you can use a service like Payoneer or TransferWise, which essentially gives you a US bank account that you can use with the wire transfer method, or you can use the card that each of these services gives you and use that in conjunction with Alibaba's trade assurance. Now, remember, if you're following along and wanting to build your own Amazon business, then I'd recommend you join the $1 Million Case Study Challenge. The first steps are joining our private Facebook group. Each week, you'll receive action items so that you can follow along and be building your own business. The link is in the description. In the next episode of the $1 Million Case Study, we're going to be talking about all things branding and packaging. I'm going to be hosting a design competition for our brand new logo. Discover which one we pick, so make sure you tune in. I'll see you there. Like, some people are like super detailed and they want to put in that $2 worth of fuel to like go down to the post office. I'll cut. Let's have a break.